We had a situation where we had a lot of bare ground, we were feeding stock regularly. We had a low species diversity, and we just weren't happy with the way the country was. The country wasn't healthy. So primarily we were looking to increase the capacity or the production in our grazing business and basically look after our land better. And then ultimately we've learnt that we're managing for our soil health. And that's led us down the path to soil carbon. We were looking to change our management in the early days, and we introduced time control grazing. We cut the property up into a lot of smaller paddocks and larger mobs for shorter graze periods. So the infrastructure changes that we made when we started down the path was we put up single wire electric fencing, cut up our country into a lot more paddocks. I think we increased from maybe 10 to 150 paddocks. We also obviously had to introduce a water system, many more water points than we had. Other changes we've made, introduction of legumes. We've brought in a perennial summer legume called Pregades, and we've introduced subtropical grasses. Again, mainly to increase the productivity of the business and the carrying capacity. So I guess one of the original reasons we got into the change in our grazing business was to increase carrying capacity, and we have seen that increase from around about 8 stock days to early 20s, 22 or 3 stock days per hectare. We're also seeing an increase in desirable species, and certainly we're in melon-hole country here, and small falls of rain used to run off, and now our water infiltration is much better. Our recovery out of dry periods is much more rapid. We're seeing more humus in the soil, but we can certainly dig up and find evidence of glomalin on root systems and therefore bacterial activity. But I suppose it's more the structure of the soil looks to have improved a lot. So basically soil carbon is built from the action of plants, photosynthesis and the interaction with biology under the soil, and it's living and dying, and all the happenings under the soil is actually building the humus and therefore building the soil carbon. It's not an old piece of charcoal from a long time ago. It's actually, in the way that we're doing it, it's ever changing and ever increasing day to day. So we've used mainly time control grazing in an effort to build our soil carbon. The plant is being bitten off and then rested, and underneath the ground it's exudating roots, and it's also in its interaction with the biology. That's really how we're building the humus and therefore soil carbon under the soil. So I guess it was in 2008 we first heard of the potential of soil carbon, and it was pretty early days, and we went out and took some pretty rudimentary shovel depth tests in 4 sites, and we mixed that up in a bucket, so only 10 centimetres deep, and we had that tested and parked that. And then in 2015, I guess, soil carbon became, much more promising. So we retested those sites, and that showed us a reasonable sequestration in that top 10 centimetres. And that's when we looked to engage Carbon Link and register a soil project, and they came and did our first baseline. So when we initially became interested in the soil carbon, being 6 years ago, there wasn't actually a lot of practitioners in that space. So, and we had an interaction with Carbon Link through the RCS system, where we'd learnt the time control grazing among other things. So yeah, it seemed a natural fit. We knew some of the people, and we trusted them, and we also saw that they were investing quite a lot of money in the testing process. So the process involved was quite, there was a lot of paperwork. That was, I guess, the major part of what Carbon Link brought. Honestly, we would not have done a soil carbon project had we not had assistance with the paperwork. The process for us was, other than supplying information, was relatively straightforward. We had to come up with quite a lot of records for Carbon Link to register our project. But basically, once that was underway, we really weren't physically involved as much. Having a professional company manage our soil carbon project allowed us to just concentrate on what we do day to day. As I said before, they've invested a lot of money in the testing process, and therefore the opportunity to have a higher yield of carbon is there. We also knew that they were spending quite a lot of money on hardware for the testing, and they were going down to 1.2 metres. I guess one of the advantages of going down to 1.2 metres is you're getting much more stable carbon. Obviously the top few centimetres can be quite labile, can come and go with droughts and fires, and so the deeper we can store the carbon and measure it, then the more secure it is.